in Matthew 5, Jesus comes and he says, you are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its flavor, wherewith shall it be salted? You are a city set on a hill. You are not to be hid. Now, when are you losing your flavor? When you just sit and on your lazy boys, not running your race, not doing or fulfilling the purpose that God has for you. Because the minute you step into Christ, you step into the purposes of God, and you have to let go of your mind so that you can have His mind. Now, if you just sit there passively, you are like an arm that is lame. You have just lost your favor. Because, guys, just get it. We are His hands. We are His eyes on earth. We are His body now. He works through us. We are His feet. And when you get His impulses, He will tell you, turn right, turn left. I just love experiencing this moving of the Spirit in you, that you know you have to call this person now. When you call them, it's like, you just called me at the right time. It's God working through us all the time. So if you are in the body and you are not functioning in the body, you're like a lame hand, or you're like a foot that goes nowhere. You just hang there. You have lost your favor. But when you look back, this is terrible. Because salt, He says, we are the salt of the world. We give the flavor. We give the taste of God to the world. Have you ever ate porridge without salt? The other day I was really wanting some millipap, and I didn't have time to make it. And I asked the lady working in my house, please make me some millipap the way you do it. And I didn't realize that she eats it with salt. I'm eating that pap, and I'm like, I don't want to eat this. It's like, I went back and I put some salt in it. Like, yeah, this is good. So I think this is what the world does. This is why the world doesn't want to come to church. You know what the world does is that, this doesn't taste good. So we are trying to present Jesus, but it doesn't taste good because it's not real. There's no flavor in it. But there's another character of salt that is crazy. So we've had a little tar road to my house, and the weeds are growing into the tar. And we don't want to use poison and poison everything. But what we did, we bought big packets of salt, rough salt, and we throw it on the weeds, and they die. So when you have this concentrated salt, it has the ability to kill. Have you ever seen a salt pan where anything grows? But that is the flavor of the world. But when it's compacted like that, it's just death. This is really death zone. It says in Hebrews 1, in the times past, God spoke to the fathers in separate revelations. So this is what the natural mind has. We have a book full of stories. You know, it's like a children's Bible. Today Jesus walks on the water. Tomorrow it's Samson. And then it's David killing Goliath. And we don't understand the volume of the book. So, please get it. You must go back to Hebrews 10. Hebrews 10 is awesome. He talks about these sacrifices that never can clean a man's conscience. And God is not happy with it because these sacrifices was not good anymore. In the New Testament, He says the sacrifices must be salted, so it must be good. So we have become the living sacrifice. But then He goes on and He says, in the volume of the book, I've come, a body you've prepared me. Hebrews 10 is awesome. It's like a whole summary of the second world and its purposes, its beginning and its end. So in verse 9, He says, I've come to remove the old and bring the new. Now that one verse sums up the whole of the book of Revelation. And if you take those happenings and put it in our time, you are mushing time. And you don't understand time. The only reason, you want to lay it out in time. You have to come into the Spirit to understand time. So we must look at where the book of Revelation was written and what it was all about. It was the hand of God outstretched. It was about Jesus Christ, the head, the church, His body, and the kingdom, the dwelling place. And this is how he did it. He dealt with the adversary, the dragon, which is Satan, the beast, which is the kingdoms of the world that comes from Babylon, and it deals with the false prophet, which was that system that was to bring forth the Christ. And they crucified the Christ. Now, that system had to be taken out, and that was done by fire. So the system became the whore, and we read it in Isaiah. He says, how has this great city become a whore? So the three frog spirits is the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Christ dealt with it in order to bring his body, which he is the head of, and the dwelling place is the earth, the church, a place prepared, the kingdom of God, right here in this horrible realm of darkness. Now, how did he do it? He did it through seals, trumpets, and vials. And this also comes from the book of Revelation. Please, what I'm trying to do now is I want to bring the volume of the book, because we read it in separate stories. You cannot read Revelation without reading Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, at least, because it's all one story. And if you don't read it in the spirit, you mush everything. And you're waiting for the end of the world, and you're waiting for the dragon and the beast and the false prophet, and you want to make now history, then history, and you can't change history. It's gone. You have to understand it in times. So we are here now with Abraham. What? He's the father of faith. So we have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. They were the foundation stones of the house Moses built. But Christ is the chief cornerstone, but the builders rejected it. And then Jesus came and said, break down these stones. Now I'll build my house. I'm going to prepare you a place. In my Father's house are many mansions, many level dwelling. Oh, the word is like, what? If you start eating the word, it's just like crazy. So what we have here now, Abraham, his nephew went with, and it was something that God didn't command to happen. So he chose the nice place. But he went and lived in the valley that was very fertile. But the name of the city, Sodom, means fire. The name of Gomorrah means taking out, removing. So Lot went and he stayed in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, this is just not a story in the Bible that we don't know what it is. Because we read Bible school stories. Listen, when Noah came out the ark, there was a raven, a dove, and then a dove that never returned, that stayed. Noah himself was the raven because his generation went down to the Tower of Babel. Then God called Abram. But this dove left because the seed of Abram in the natural seed line, they said, we want a king. And that moment, the dove left. But when Jesus was baptized, it was said to John, on him you see the dove come and stay. You cannot read Noah without understanding Jesus was the fulfillment of this whole new thing that God came, because it was for the Spirit to dwell inside a man. So we can't separate these stories. Neither can we separate what happened here. Over and over, Moses said in his song, just before he died, your end will be like Sodom and Gomorrah. You'll be like the vine of Sodom and Gomorrah. Just look at it. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the fourth man, Jesus, and Moses, the builder of the house, just before he died. God said, sing them a song. And in the song, he told them about this fire coming. And he said, you are like Sodom and Gomorrah. So in Revelation, he says, the two witnesses lay dead in the street of Sodom and Egypt, where the Lord was crucified. My dear word. Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem, not in Sodom and not in Egypt. But you have to understand the volume of the book, because they became what they worshipped. So this whole thing of Sodom is actually pictures. The whole Bible is pictures, foreshadowing. It's patterns that repeat, and we need to understand these patterns. So this is why the apocryphal books are not in the Bible, because they didn't fulfill all the patterns. So why would you go to other books if you can't even understand these patterns? Now, I'm going to read something crazy to you here, and I hope you get it. So the angel came, and he said, get out of the city. I'm going to burn the city. And you got to take everybody with you, your wife and your children. You got to get out the city. In Genesis 19:15, he says, and when the morning arose, the words in the Bible, I think if you can understand what I'm going to say now, it is so awesome. Hosea says, he will come to us like the morning. Jesus said, the people that sat in darkness saw a great light. And the day broke because God said, today I have begotten you. So time is a day of death, with the evening, a morning, and a day. The morning is when Christ came. Joy to the world, the Christ has come. David said, joy will come in the morning. So from Christ, every day is a morning. Spirit, you can only experience the morning after Christ has came, because those before him was in prison. That's why death has doors and hell has gates. So Jesus went down, opened the doors, and David said, open up you gates, let the king. He emptied the place. He emptied Hades and Sheol. We mix it up, and we think hell is hell. No. He emptied Hades, Sheol, and at the judgment of the world, which was 70 AD, Satan and those that were not in the book of life were thrown into the lake of fire, which is second death. But those that die in Christ have no part in the second death. Because we don't understand time, we mush these times and we don't understand the word. But by the Spirit, we can understand the word. We can understand it. We can understand the Bible. So why would you have a Bible if you can't understand it? But you have to do it by the Spirit. Now listen to this. Morning. And when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot and said, arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. This is a prophecy, because he called Jerusalem Sodom and Gomorrah. So when the morning arose, people had to go out. And this is where we pick it up. In Matthew 24, they said, when will the rocks be thrown down? What is the sign of your coming, Son of Man? When is the end of the world? The second world, not our world. The church is a world without end. And he said, when you see these things happening, flee. This is what's happening here. This is a foreshadow of what is going to happen to the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, and the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought them forth and set them without the city. This was like time travel. The whole city was grabbing hold on to them. But God literally took them out and put them there. This is what happened when Jerusalem burned down. This is all one story. So when we talk about this, the end of the world, the beginning of the world was Abraham, because he was sacrificing his son on Mount Moriah, which is the same place as Golgotha, the beginning and the end. The end is always set from the beginning. Please, we can't separate these things. So now God took them out, and this is what happened. Jesus said to them, flee. Now, if you look at Jerusalem, there was the city of Zion. Solomon built the temple, and Hezekiah built the old city. But Jerusalem was to bring forth the Christ, but they were infiltrated with Satan's seed. They became the fig tree. Pharisees, Sadducees, rulers of the temple. God never appointed it. He appointed a priesthood. And now, those people that fled Jerusalem is the remnant that God spoke about. There's always a remnant. God always has a people. When you think you're alone, I'm sorry for you. You can find them around every bush. You might not find them in many churches, but they are there. God is always waking a people up. So when the city burned, the people that fled became the daughter of Zion. which is from the city of Zion, which is actually coming from Jerusalem. So the daughter of Zion, oh my word, she brought forth the church. Like Mary brought forth the Son, the daughter of Zion brought forth the church. We need to understand these things. Other times we mush the revelation in the word and we don't understand the word. So here they got out. But I want to take you back. He said, as the morning arose. Now, if you just go further in verse 23, he says, the sun was risen upon the earth. Now, okay, between this, as they got out, Lot started arguing and said, we don't want to go to the mount. We'll go to that small mountain. That small mountain is insignificant. And so many times, what Christians do, we exchange the full purposes of God in our life for such insignificant rubbish. And when you go for the insignificant and not the purposes of God, you have an opportunity to turn back. And this is exactly what happened in his house. Can you imagine this man escaping all this fire and then losing his wife? So listen to this, the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. So Christ has already come, but now the city is going to burn. Now, I'm telling you, I've always thought about this. Can you imagine fire from heaven and this explosion? I always wanted to see a volcano. I would be really tempted not to look back. And this is how intense this turning around is pulling on our spirit, man, is to look back and feel sorry for myself. To feel sorry for myself is to look back to where I've come from. To look back is to totally miss it. Now, when you lose the flavor, it's one thing. But when you become exterminated, poisoned, and dead is another thing. When the sun was risen upon the earth, when Lot entered Zoar, then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire, and overthrew those cities and all the plain and the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. Now, if you go there today, I cannot believe that they say this was a fertile valley, because this is why Lot chose it. It was like the Garden of Eden, the Bible says. Now it's burned and it has never resurrected. So we cannot go back to the city. We cannot go back to the law. We're at home with the Father. I will not go back. He says, but his wife looked back from behind him and she became a pillar of salt. She died on the spot. And she became a pillar of salt, a monument to the future. That even today you can go look at her. They found her. A monument of what happens to you if you turn back. Can you believe it? I remember when I came to Israel, I just cried and cried and cried because I never wanted to go because of all the religious nonsense going on. But as I came there, I realized, oh, the signposts are names that's in my Bible. I remember when I looked up at Nazareth, I asked him, what is that white on the hill? He says, it's Nazareth. I just backed up. Because it's like God chose a small piece of land to prove everything that he wants to give us in the Spirit. Come on, guys. Sure. We cannot look at the things that are seen. We have to look at the unseen. But now, there is a big, big story in the Bible